so much that we can really do. And maybe this will shift as we figure out how to move humanity forward with abundance for all, where people get out of this high beta limbic state that's run from the tiger. If we can shift into a restorative alpha theta state, we actually can tune into our higher selves, have biology where we're doing repair in our bodies better. That could be an amazing shift for humanity if you're not worried about things that most people are worried about. Most people are staying in this constant state of worry, whether they realize it or not, especially if they watch the news. There's a zillion things we can all be worrying about. And if we're focusing our attention there rather than on what we love, what we want to contribute, how we want to make the world better, it's going to be really challenging to make this shift that we can make here in the next decade.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Love Conquers Fear podcast. I just finished Michael Pollan's new book, A World Appears. I told you I was reading it and really enjoying it. And it has a lot of parallels with Annaka Harris's book, Lights On, that I read last year. She's married to Sam Harris and is really steeped in science. And her book is a wandering through all the different theories of consciousness. And it's fun to hear her wander through that. And it actually concludes with her belief, after all that wandering, that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, which has all types of implications. As I mentioned on the podcast many times before, 2025 was a real awakening for consciousness. We had Dan Brown's new book come out, The Secret of Secrets, which is all about non-local consciousness. We had the telepathy tapes come out with season 2, which is fantastic. You know, at one point that was more popular than the Joe Rogan podcast. It's now being turned into a Netflix series. I believe it's Netflix at least, but they were talking about that on the podcast. And then, of course, Annaka Harris's book. And then this year started out with Michael Pollan's new book coming out. And I can tell you it's different than Annaka Harris's in a couple of ways. First of all, the similarities. It starts out very science-based, and it goes very deep on the evidence of, you know, plant-based consciousness and how plants move, especially when you really speed up the time lapse to actually see how they're moving and, you know, some type of speed like us. And so it really gives you the sense that there's some form of consciousness there. And it goes deep into all different types of science around consciousness and cells and the electromagnetic field that we radiate, and all different types of, you know, fun things I can't cover here in a short intro. But then as it goes into different areas of the book and concludes with a deep discussion on self and the nature of self and the difference between our ego and the self or the observer, it gets more metaphysical. And throughout the book, he weaves in a lot around psychedelics too, which is interesting because his last book was called How to Change Your Mind. I've mentioned that Netflix documentary and the book is some of my favorites, which is a pretty deep exploration around psychedelics and the transformation that can be had with that for some people. But it's interesting because in A World Appears, Michael Pollan, when he's talking with a lot of these scientists who have been exploring the nature of consciousness and coming up with their own theories, they have been also using psychedelics from time to time to try to grasp at the nature of consciousness itself. And some of them, even with that, still cling on to kind of a materialist worldview, that the hard problem of consciousness is just that, you know, something magically happened in the brain and with natural selection to produce consciousness, and that's it, kind of end of story, and we're still figuring out exactly how that happened. But some of them actually, through their psychedelic journeys, and the book starts to wrap up this way, then start to shift, even though they were hardcore scientists, you know, clinging on to materialism. They start to shift and start to talk about the fact that now they believe that yes, consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe. And Michael Pollan kind of concludes the book with his belief. He's kind of hinting at it. He doesn't as firmly declare it as Annika Harris, that he must admit that it probably is this fundamental property of the universe. So it's interesting meandering, and he's got a great style. If you've read any of his books or watched him on Netflix, you'll either agree or disagree with me on that. But I really like his style and his humility as he walks through this. But it concludes, in a very similar way to Annika Harris's book, which, kind of made me chuckle as I was reading it. There's a lot of joy in the book and a lot of humility. He also concludes it with, I think that I am now even more confused about what consciousness is versus when he started the journey himself. And it was about a 5-year journey for him in writing the book. I'm also happy to report that today, as I'm recording this, is a really important day for me as an author. I just handed over the final edits for my 3rd book, my most important work to date, which is called Love Conquers Fear, the name of this podcast. But the book has this subtitle of Humanity, AI, and the Age of Abundance for All. So it feels really good to get to the point where the book now is with the publisher. It's about to be turned into a PDF where I can deliver that to friends. Every guest that's been on this podcast, I'm going to deliver it to, including the one you're going to see today. And they're going to get this advanced reader's copy. And, really, it's going to be incredible to start getting the feedback. I mean, back through that really tedious process of editing. Oh my gosh, it is always tedious. It's my 3rd book. It is always tedious to go through that. But it also is a lot of joy too, because you reread your work now after flowing with it, and it gives you that reader's perspective. And this really is the best work that I've ever put out. And I am hoping that it really helps humanity have a heart shift. We need a heart shift as we're in this exponential curves. And we'll be digging into that today. I'm really excited to get that handed off. And just, again, if you are interested, Do More Good, the publisher, episode 41 was with Jay Wilkinson, who's the founder of that. And you can hear details about the conference that he's hosting. It's actually his 7th Do More Good conference. And the theme for this year's is Love Conquers Fear, Together We Rise. And that's May 27th through 29th in Omaha. So if you'd like to join me and Jay and just amazing leaders that we talked about on that episode, please do. That'll be the first time that I'm really publicly speaking at an event about the book. I'm also running a workshop on how to overcome fear. And this is the first time I'm doing that. I'm not really, kind of turning into a workshop type guy. I'm an entrepreneur through and through and an investor in startups. But I thought this would be a really good opportunity to explore that with people. And I've done a lot of internal work. And so sharing that, but also learning from others how they've done that and become better leaders and more love-forward leaders to bring out the best in themselves and their team members. So today I'm really, really excited to have Dr. Ann Shippy on. Ann, it's so good to be here with you.
So good to be here with you.
Yeah, this has been a while in the making. You came out with this beautiful book, The Preconception Revolution. And wish I had this book when we got pregnant, although we did really, one thing you don't know about me is Deborah and I have been married almost 30 years. It'll be 30 years on June 9th.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. We waited 8 years to have kids. So we had a long marriage we always knew we were going to have kids, but we really were emotionally and physically prepared when we did. So I think that we did some of the things that you're recommending in here. But this is much more comprehensive. And I wish we had this book at the time.
It's what I wish I had too.
But yeah, I really appreciate you putting this out in the world. And a big shout out to Jason and Jessica Karp, who hosted you for the book launch. And you just gave a great speech that night, and I asked you if you'd be on the podcast, and here we are. I'm appreciative of our friendship.
I'm very appreciative, and it's so nice to get to know you better through these different modalities.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, so I mean, I would love to hear about just your journey. From I mean, you've got a really interesting journey on the path to becoming a doctor. Very unusual path for it, a path that I could relate to, although I've never went into the doctor side of it, but the first part of your career arc. And I'm really curious to just dive into, like, why is this your kind of life's work now?
Yeah, so I really hadn't intended to become a doctor.
Yeah.
I love math and science, and so went into chemical engineering, and then ended up doing manufacturing engineering for IBM, and got to do amazing projects like get rid of fluorocarbons ahead of the mandate in our cleaning process. And I just really thought I was going to be retiring from IBM at some point.
Right.
At the point that
you were
going to
be a lifer.
Yeah, I was going to be a lifer. I was going to get my watch,
Right.
And I loved it. Like the culture was great for me there, where we had a lot of autonomy and really able to do what we thought was right and build great teams, and it really, really enjoyed it. But then I went on vacation and came back sick and couldn't get the doctors to help me figure out what I needed to do to get better. I was like, I was fine before I went on vacation, and now I can't keep any weight on, and just was miserable in my body. And the word on the street at the time was that I had cancer because I looked so sick. And so I had to piece together what I needed to do to heal by reading books and applying different diets, seeing a nutritionist, an acupuncturist, this immunologist 2 hours away. Like, I just followed all these threads to finally figure out what was going on with me and to help my body to heal. And then once I was better, I was like, wow, this medical system is so broken that even though it ruled out a whole bunch of things that I didn't have, it didn't help me figure out what I needed to do to be well. And the Band-Aids that I was offered weren't really even very good.
Right.
So I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go to medical school so I can do medicine differently.
Right.
And I did. I was started to medical school when I was 32, and got to get that foundation that I felt like I needed to be able to do medicine differently. And I had a little bit of run-in with infertility. I didn't know that was really a sign that something was off in my body even before I went on vacation and got sick. But I was very fortunate to be able to have a baby in med school and one in residency at 34 and 38.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. So then when I finished residency, there was no clear path for anything to do to add the integrative medicine, alternative ways of thinking. So I went into standard internal medicine practice, seeing 20 patients a day, 10 to 30 minutes per patient, just click through, know what prescription I was going to write within 5 minutes of seeing them practically. And so I was off my path.
Right.
But fortunately, my body helped me again to get on my path. And I developed a couple of autoimmune disorders. And that was right around the time that functional medicine was even able to be found.
Okay.
And so I went and did a functional medicine training and worked with another doctor who had done some training and reversed my autoimmune diseases. And that gave me the courage to stop doing traditional internal medicine, get off the insurance plans, and start my own practice so that I could spend time with my patients and practice medicine the way that I really wanted to.
And how would you describe, like, what you provide today as a doctor to your patients, like kind of the holistic practice? Because it's really neat. It's like it really is like the future. You're in my opinion, you're kind of like a window into what the future of healthcare should be like.
Thank you. That means so much.
I've got a lot of friends that really, really think so highly of you, and you've really changed their life.
Yeah, I'm so lucky to get to do what I do. I get to use my chemical engineering brain, use the latest technology in testing, and then really delve into what's going on from a standpoint of genetics, epigenetics, how the genes are being dialed up and dialed down, look for environmental toxins, study their microbiome, the organisms in the body that really run us a lot of times. The mitochondria, there's so much technology now that we can dig in deeper than what the traditional doctors are even familiar with being able to test, and then help my patients find the most holistic way possible to address the things that we find, and then use the high-tech things when it makes sense. Sometimes we'll do stem cells, we'll do peptides, we'll use medications when it makes sense. So it's really getting to combine the best of both worlds. And then sometimes there's a metaphysical component to the visit. So I'm highly intuitive, and sometimes I'll hear or see little messages that help to guide me in the either which of these tests and things to run, or what a particular solution would be. But sometimes there's something emotional or spiritual going on that we can delve into, because the body, the mind, the spirit are not separate.
Right.
They each inform each other. So like one of my new patients this week has been, and she's had a really, really difficult life from a standpoint of, some bad things that happened to her in childhood, and then a marriage that's not very good, and then her husband has some PTSD after being in the military and going into some of those really horrible places that are really hard for humans to experience. And so, when we were first talking, I was hearing what was going on. I was like, well, why are you still, in my mind, I'm like, why are you still in this marriage? Because it's definitely part of what's making you sick, because you're not feeling safe.
Right.
And then as we explored it, there's some good reasons why she's still there, and some things that she can explore on the spiritual side of things, and then maybe some deeper understanding of what's going on with him.
Right. Yeah.
From a trauma and spiritual standpoint.
Yeah.
So, because then underneath, after I heard about the initial story, I could actually feel there's a deep love that brings them together. And so when people come in with these dilemmas, and it's right when they plop on the table, in the first of it, it wasn't her list of physical things that really came to the surface for her to tell me about. It was this emotional, spiritual side. It's really fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, that's the part where I just think that a lot of doctors won't even go there, right? I mean, I had Evan Alexander on the podcast, the author of Proof of Heaven. He was on episode 46, and he had largely lost his faith or spirituality until he went into a coma and had a near-death experience that was completely transcendent, and wrote, maybe the most important book on that topic. And it was just so improbable, because for him it was E. coli powered meningitis. And he was a Harvard-trained, part of the Harvard Medical School faculty neurosurgeon.
Oh, wow.
For a long time. So he, incredibly smart individual. And he would have patients coming back from near-death experiences and saying, I've seen this or I've seen that. And he just kind of wrote it off as they were hallucinating or something until it happened to him. And he called it the ultra real. So I think that it's an important part of the equation of holistic health, because we're not just this physical body. There's more going on in terms of this reality. And I love the fact in your book that you also touch on spiritual health as well, in terms of how couples should get to that point with each other to then be able to conceive?
I think there's a process of really inviting the soul that's going to join your family in. And I think when there's a deep connection between the couple and they're very intentional about the things that they want to be intentional about, I just provide some possibilities of the things for them to be intentional about, that it kind of helps the soul come slide in. So and I, the more I start talking about this and the more I'm sharing about this, it feels like it just accelerates how easy people are getting pregnant. It's really fascinating.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of spiritual teachers have told me that that a lot of disease is actually caused by a lack of spiritual health more than anything specifically going on in the body. And so I think that's fascinating. I mean, I don't know exactly how that works, right? And how we decode that. But one of the things that I'm excited about is this exponential curve that we're in with AI, quantum computing, robotics, brain-computer interfaces, all simultaneously accelerating. As it's going to let us decode more and more about how to provide holistic healthcare, because we're gonna know more of what's going on, versus right now we're probably going to look back on this moment in 2026, 10 years from now in 2036, as we're in the Stone Ages of sorts.
Yes. Yeah, it really is the access to information. And, somebody who has lots of questions and curious about things all the time, it speeds up how quickly I can find the answers. Of course, you also, always have to go back and double check the answers, but it's so fun to be able to play. And it'll be interesting to see what you think with AI coming. Like, I still think there's this human curiosity that's such an important ingredient to make the most out of AI, right?
Yeah. It's just like any technology. It's how we use it, which really matters a lot, and the type of intentionality we have. And that's been true since the discovery of fire. We could use it to warm our food, heat our caves, etc. Or we could use it to do really bad things with it, in terms of war and all types of horrible things that we only want to kind of imagine. And of course, humanity used it for both, but you look at the arc of history, and primarily we used it for good. And that's, with AI, it's going to be such an exponential curve. We're already in it and seeing from week to week how much it changes, that humanity's going to face a collective choice where we have to shift our hearts to ultimately embrace using it to create abundance for everyone on this planet. And that collective shift is going to be the most fateful decision we've ever had in humanity. And so that's why I'm doing this project. This is my soul song. This is my love letter to humanity.
That's beautiful. And just bringing that awareness that we are, as a collective, going to be making some important decisions.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people are just kind of going along day to day, not really seeing that there are different paths that we could take.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's conversations like these and other guests I've had on, like, really talking about that, just taking steps towards that, so that we can be a part of the light and part of the collective shift. I'm curious, if you look back, though, was there like a catalyst in your life outside of your own experience? Your own experience, that's an important catalyst. I don't want to minimize that, like the fact that you're really trying to heal yourself. But when you look back at your life today, this lifetime, I'll say, what were some of those important sparks you think that led to you doing what you're doing today?
As parents, we have these ongoing themes that we want our children to really be instilled with, and to truly know that they're loved.
All right.
So there were a couple of messages from my father. One, he talked about ESP. So the extrasensory perception.
Yeah.
And
Very telepathy tapes. Yeah.
very telepathy takes it way ahead of and there being really any science or any real data around it.
Right.
And so he would tell us that we could communicate with him beyond time space. And that's kind of held true. Like so that I think just that belief that that's possible, and actually seeing evidence of it with my family was super informative. And so now that the world seems to be going more woo,
Right.
Even when I started practicing functional medicine 20 years ago, that woo side was kind of under the covers, like I didn't really want to reveal that part of myself. And then there was a message about always being the best that I can be, like always doing my best. And so I think that's what I thought everybody did. Like and that is a belief that I think most people are doing the best that they can with what they have at hand at the moment. And sometimes we have more resources than others. Like, none of us are perfect, and sometimes we run out of resources and yell at our children, or run the red light, or whatever it is that.
Oh yeah. Trust me, I have plenty of parenting regrets.
Exactly.
There are times where I've not been my best self, but overall, I think we've done a pretty good job.
They've turned out pretty well.
Yeah.
They know they're loved.
Yeah, for sure.
And they have they found their own inner resources. So I think, and then my mother, just education, learning, helping me to figure out that I was smart, even though I'm a very non-traditional learner. When I always just wanted to do something that would make a difference. And so everything from a dream of being a high school math teacher, because I thought that was, an important, noble thing to do, to teach children, which I still really feel that way. Also getting these windows into human suffering. And feeling the weight of that. And really wanting to find ways to reduce that human suffering. So, there were points in med school and residency that I still feel the reverberation of the children with the near drowning experiences, oh gosh, this is popping up in my awareness right now. The little baby that was picked up by the dog and carried, came in with it, like a newborn that had just gone home, that had, very serious wounds from the dog not understanding the baby coming home, and to the children with that had been horribly abused, to death, like losing someone you love so deeply. So it's this immersion into humanity. And even with all of that pain and suffering, there's this thing that overrides that, and that's the love.
All right.
It wouldn't be so painful to me to see these things happening to people if I didn't already have some love for them. And then just the way that especially in these hard situations, people really show up for each other. It's extraordinary what humans will do for each other.
Absolutely.
And that gives me hope. I think that's kind of like where you're going with.
It's exactly where I'm going with this. Yeah. It's this deep love for all of humanity, and this deep calling to do everything I can in this lifetime to help humanity have that heart shift, so that we make it to the other side. And the way I look at it is that whether you look at it as metaphorical or mystical, or both, it's that merger of heaven and earth. it's this lifetime where we can create that. And we have this capacity for infinite love that we can bring out, when we lead from the heart. It's the most beautiful way to lead.
So that's been something that is so interesting because, I think a lot of times in families, there's the sibling rivalry and feeling like there's a limited amount of love from the parents. So they got to get their piece, right?
Right.
But now as a parent, I feel like, oh my gosh, I have an infinite amount of love for both of my children. There's no competition because I have the capacity to create an infinite amount of love, which I think is such an amazing aspect of humans, right?
Right.
Like we are the creators of a frequency that has an infinite number of flavors. Like the love that I have for this child is a little different than this child versus, loving to go on vacation.
Right.
All the different things that we love. I do think there's a frequency that we're creating when we experience that emotion.
Oh, for sure. I think it's the highest vibratory field in the universe, and we know whether it's meditation, psychedelic journeys, whether it's a near-death experience, that is the actual reality behind the veil. That we are all deeply loved, and we're rooted in this spiritual reality that is the definition of love. And I think we get the concept of love from God or the universe or consciousness or the divine or whatever you want to call that. I always use the word God, but I always tell people, look, if you're triggered by that, use whatever word you want, but let's be thankful that that's the actual reality. And then we're here in this world of form, this earth school, constantly challenged. And I think the reason we're constantly challenged is to allow our souls to grow. And that's been the deep dive on so many books I've read and so much ancient spiritual text as well.
And do you feel like as we grow that capacity to create love, that dial gets amped up?
Yes.
I feel that way too.
Yeah, it's, there's a lot of ways that people refer to this, including the consciousness awakening. But yes, it is to create that frequency across Earth where we wake up, from this kind of sleepwalk and say, let's choose that and, choose the spiritual reality here on Earth. I had a guest on who, interestingly enough, was an atheist, self-declared atheist, but really great guy, amazing author, Jamie Metzel, who was on episode 19 of the podcast. And he made a very compelling point that I'll never forget, and his books outline this point as well, is he's like, Brett, we already have abundance today. It's just not distributed.
Yeah. That's such a good point.
Isn't it such a good point? Because like we have all the food we need to feed the planet actually today. It's just not distributed. But another way to think about that is that the cost of distribution are going to plummet and the cost of production are going to plummet as we go through this technological curve.
It's interesting because as you say that, this window that I get into humanity through my patients, right? Like what the conversations that can be had behind closed doors that are safe. Self-love is such an issue. Like sometimes people will come in where everything looks like there's total abundance in their life, the perfect family set up, the perfect job, they're having the right car, all the abundance. Like it looks on the surface like everything is there, but somehow that self-love isn't coming in.
Right.
And I think that is part of what causes people to hoard and to not share, is if they don't really feel the love pouring into them.
Yeah.
So I have this theory.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
I I believe that we have love receptors.
Mm-hmm.
So, part of how in biology, part of how we know that we've got hormones or other chemical messengers in our body is that they have to hit the receptor and then inform the cell that the chemical or the hormone is there, and then that drives the whole process with the DNA making things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so my theory is that in the metaphysical, we have love receptors, but that they can be damaged or they can be closed. And so then sometimes even, you love your kids so much that they can't even feel, but they're going through whatever puberty or whatever they're self-doubt, whatever they're going through.
Yeah.
And there's this enormous amount of love that flows to them, but they can't even feel it. And I think that's because something's happened in the metaphysical that they've just shut it down. Mm-hmm. And then I have a theory.
Yeah. I love this. No, this is great.
Sometimes I don't go reading the other books on these topics because I want to just see what flows in through me, but I should probably read and see if anybody else has these ideas too.
Right.
Then the other idea is that the love actually hits the DNA and then gets amplified, and that gets actually broadcast out into the universe. That's part of why humanity is actually important in existence, is because there's something that's happening in the fields that we probably don't even have sensors for.
Right.
That's kind of like the bat can pick up different senses than what we can. That we play some kind of important role in kind of fueling the materials, the plasma or whatever it is that we're in existence to make things possible.
Yeah.
And a lot of us are having these awarenesses around other energies that are actually coming to help humanity through this transition.
Yeah.
Because we play some role of with this magical thing called love.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I completely believe in what you're saying. My heart really lights up as you're saying it, and my soul, and I know it's true. We don't have the scientific instrumentation necessarily to prove that, but yet. But I mean, you can see us grasping at it. I mean, you probably seen Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds, the documentary.
I haven't seen it yet.
That was one that Jason Karp turned me on to.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of, my soul quest, which started in Kerala, India at the end of 2024, gosh, it's only a 2-hour long
speeding
documentary.
Along so fast, just 2024.
Yeah. I've read over 60 books since then.
Wow.
But I watched it there, and it's only 2 hours long, but it took me 6 hours because I just kept on stopping it. And I was like, yes, that's the answer. And it really brought science and spirituality together in a beautiful way. And it shows you, how matter reacts to love. And we know, things like if you talk to plants in a loving way versus if you yell at them and, amplify fear, that fear is a contractor and love is an opener. And you can see actually how it shapes matter. There's all types of water experiments and all types of experiments.
Work,
yeah, exactly. What's his name again?
I think Emoto, something like that. Yeah.
I've watched his videos on YouTube, and it's fascinating, right? Like to see actually how it shapes matter.
It'd be interesting for you to interview Konstantin Korotkov.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, he's done some interesting measuring. We could actually ask him if he can measure some of these things, because I think he's in that quantum physics realm.
Here's the really cool thing is as we get better and better about understanding, quantum physics, which there still is no great reconciliation between quantum physics and classical science or physics, actually, Michael Pollan's new book, A World Appears, dives deep into that. It seems like every book on consciousness dives deep into that. And we know through Higgs boson, and the work at CERN, that there is a field. We know that quantum entanglement is real. Quantum computing doesn't work without it. And I do think that the actual reality we're in is one that is deeply encoded with love, but we're having to constantly rediscover that. And we are vessels for the divine, and we have our free will, but we're here to constantly rediscover that. And the thing that excites me the most about this exponential of exponential curves that we're in, and there's lots of things that are potential problems, right, for us to overcome, and some very real problems, is that it's going to allow us to decode that. And wow, talk about the ultimate biohack. Like if we actually got to the point in our lifetime where the soul and the physical vessel become really aligned and cohere, and we can manifest more love, that's the type of awakening that humanity needs. Because when someone has an awakening, whether it's through psychedelics or near-death experiences or just a spontaneous awakening. I had an amazing woman on that's in health tech. Actually, I just found out, like literally right before you came over, that her company was just acquired. She's a very good friend. She was on episode 31. Her name's Pariah Beam, originally from Turkey, and has just had a fantastic, academic career here, and then entrepreneurial career. This reality we're in, and decoding it and figuring out how to work in it is going to lead us, I think, to a place where we're going to be able to improve outcomes in ways that we can't even imagine today, because we just know so little. We don't know what 96% of the universe is even made of. We call it dark energy and dark matter. We have a mutual friend with Mark Gober, who he was on episode 2, one of my favorite authors, and I'm just like still so happy that he moved here. I joked with him when I first met him. I didn't know him at all. I cold reached out to him because his books moved me so much, and I was like, I'm going to predict that you're probably going to move to Austin, and he sure did.
Well, I met him as he was writing his first book and got to be, write one of his endorsements. So.
Oh, that's cool. Actually, I didn't know that. That's really cool. So literally for an into upside down thinking, you were one of the first.
So I met him right as the book was going to be coming out, and we just clicked.
How cool.
I loved it that he was writing the book and was so inspired by it. I was like, yes, I'm happy to.
Very fun Mark Gober moment. I hosted dinner for Eben Alexander here. They had never met in person.
Oh my gosh.
And so I actually recorded Mark meeting him in person for the first time to share a video with them. And it was just so cool because, Eben is like the lead quote on his first 2 books, the lead endorser. Yeah, it was such,
you are such a connector.
So cool. Well, it was just such a beautiful moment. Honestly, that type of moment to me, that was the embodiment of love, seeing them finally together in person. Was really, really cool. Before we dive into the book, I'm curious if there are some health tips that you would give us in mass. I asked Ben Greenfield the same question. He's a pretty well-known biohacker and a good friend, and it's kind of an unfair question because there's so many places you could go with that. And I know that we're all different, but I'm just curious, like, what are you most excited about? Like, is it peptides, or is it, what are the things that you're seeing where you're like, oh, this is different? And you're on the vanguard of what most people are going to be thinking about, in 5 to 10 years. So I'm just curious, like the Ann Shippy opinion.
That's, I love all the advanced tech. I love the stem cells. I love the peptides. But you know what? All of it works better when you lay a really solid foundation. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what I see is people want these, quick fixes or things that are on the leading edge.
Yeah. It's a very American question to ask.
But it all works the best if you really have a solid foundation. So for me, everything comes back to eating super clean.
Yeah.
So I love a paleo diet, the hunter-gatherer. Like, I still think our genes are set for that.
Right.
And so eating the healthiest meats, lots of vegetables, some good fats, a little bit of fruit, and minimally processed foods. So if it's in a box or a bag or try not to eat much of it, because your body just works so much better when it doesn't have to deal with all of that. And then, unfortunately, based on the environment that we live in today, all of us have built up environmental toxins between the air, the food, the personal care products, all of this. So we all need to be doing safe detoxification most days with things like liposomal glutathione and binders and liver support, making sure we're methylating well to be able to clear things out. Because we can do so much prevention with just some basic food and the right supplements.
Right.
And then the things like the stem cells and peptides and hyperbarics and saunas and all of these things actually work better. But then to go on the metaphysical side of things, I think there's, so much that we can really do to, and maybe this will shift as we figure out how to move humanity forward with abundance for all, where people get out of this high beta limbic state that's run from the tiger. If we can shift into a restorative alpha theta state where we actually can tune into our higher selves.
Right.
And have biology where we're doing repair in our bodies better. I think that could be an amazing shift for humanity if you're not worried about the things that most people are worried about.
Right.
I think most people are staying in this constant state of worry, whether they realize it or not. Like, especially if they watch the news or read the newspaper or scroll through social. It's just, there's a zillion things we can all be worrying about.
Right.
And if we're focusing our attention there rather than on what we love, what we want to contribute, how we want to make the world better, it's going to be really challenging to make this shift that we can make here in the next decade. So I love to use technology, so things like neurofeedback, whether you use a sensei or one of those and use that in a meditation practice, or go do a week-long meditation at 40 Years of Zen.
That's Dave Asprey's.
Dave Asprey's. I think that can do a ton of prevention and, again, make everything work better.
With meditation, do you have a regular meditation practice yourself?
I do.
I do too.
That's been one of the things that I have dabbled in so many things in my life. Everything from, I love Genpo Roshi, Big Mind, Big Heart. You would probably love his work too.
I don't know. Is that his book, Big Mind, Big Heart? Okay.
And then he leads some meditation retreats. He would be really fascinating for you to talk to.
Okay,
He's been a beautiful teacher for me, to centering prayer, to Joe Dispenza's, to just mindfulness training with John Kabat-Zinn and Saki Santarelli, where they've done the research around. I
went on a meditation retreat led by John Kabat-Zinn at the beginning of this year.
Oh.
Yeah, it's my first ever silent meditation retreat.
How was it?
It's really interesting. He's actually going to be on the podcast. We talked about that. Yeah, he's amazing. He's 82, but wow, he is just completely and totally super high energy, and you would never know, you'd never know. Really just incredible guy. And what it did is it really tunes up your senses. One of the things that was in A World of Peers, Michael Pollan's new book, and also a book that I just finished. It's a really short one. It's called Fearlessness by Anthony DeMello. I'm a big fan of awareness which is a book that Taro actually recommended. He was on the podcast, I think, on episode 14. But the founder of Formative, he was here, and I'm a big fan of their products. I use their products in my smoothies and take them every day. And this is not an ad. Like I don't have any sponsors or anything. This is all self-funded. But I really love his products and love him as a friend and his heart. But in both Fearlessness by Anthony DeMello and A World of Peers, there was a big part of it where it was talking about reclaiming our child mind, and that, to be embodied like a child and have that wonder for the world and seeing the stars for the first time and seeing a beautiful sunset. I told our oldest daughter, Rachel, who's 21 now, that if she just pauses and looks at the beauty of a sunset or sunrise, that she gets a day back on her life. I told her that, I think, when she was like 6 or 7 years old.
That's
and
beautiful.
She's done it ever since. She actually wrote about it in her essays to get into Tulane University. That was one of her essays. She referenced that practice, and there is something to be said for that. Now, I was making up the one day. Who knows? How much of your life you get back.
Maybe.
Might be a lot more than that, right?
Yeah.
But, just that appreciation for all the beauty that surrounds us.
There is a study, I'm going way back, I think it's like 10 or 15 years ago, that they did on awe, like just having the experience of awe and how it shifts a bunch of the neurotransmitters and hormone levels to positive. So I think you were training her how to have awe, and it probably does do something pretty magical. So now with meditation for me, sometimes I'll do a guided meditation if I'm really stressed and, need a little bit of assistance. But what I really like to do is connect with higher self, connect with God or the divine, and then just listen. Yeah. And
I get a lot of messages. Yeah, I really do.
And I have probably a pretty significant brain injury. I was electrocuted when I was 2 and didn't figure out that I had a brain injury until I went and did 40 years of Zen, and I did my brain mapping, and then also tried, after years of meditation, tried to do their alpha training in under neurofeedback, and it just didn't happen. So instead of my brain being in an alpha state, I kind of live in a theta state, which is just that highly intuitive state. And then I learned a couple years ago when Craig Ventnor came out with his book on the Human Genome Project, you weren't there, were you? Did you know Linda and Anil at the time?
I didn't know them at the time. Yeah. I mean, I love them, and they've become good friends. And, he was on the podcast talking about why AI can't become conscious. It was a really good episode. Like, we went really deep on that episode. I think that was episode 11 or 12. But it was fantastic. But yeah, he's become a very, very good friend.
So I learned that there was something called aphantasia, where you can't create a picture in your mind. He has it, and he was attributing that to part of why he was, could think differently and make the Human Genome Project work. Not that I've done anything close to that.
I have a lot of friends that actually have that. Yeah.
So
it actually runs a bit more in the tech crowd.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I have that. I cannot picture an apple in my head.
Oh, you have this too. Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, and you were in the tech crowd. So actually you still are in the tech crowd. You're just focused it on healing, helping reduce suffering. I mean, really.
But sometimes, especially in meditations, I'll get visions. And so learning that I can't create the vision made me realize that it's a receipt, that I'm receiving a message. And it made me really start to trust the visions that I get more, because it seems more likely than just my imagination going on something. Yeah. So it's,
it's turned into kind of superpower then.
Yeah, it's really a gift.
Yeah. That my friends that have it, including Anil, it does serve as a type of superpower for them. Just like people, our youngest has dyslexia, and that also becomes a superpower because their brains work so differently. Like geniusness and dyslexia, like a lot of the geniuses that are the most notable, throughout history were dyslexics.
Yes.
And they had the double whammy of not knowing what was wrong with them and society thinking they were dumb.
Yes.
Before, we actually diagnosed even what that meant, and, talking about there's probably so many things that we don't know or even going on in our bodies or spiritually that to diagnose and ultimately come up with a remedy today, that we're treating as.
And we're trying to, especially with the dyslexia, we're trying to get them to change rather than augmenting what is working great in their brains.
So I'd love to dive into some of the lessons from the book. I mean, it's a big book. It's like a, really chock full of amazing information. But what would be your best advice to, and I know you codified it in here, but the short version of your best advice to people that are planning to conceive?
Yeah, so it's been interesting being out in the world talking about this topic because I'm getting a whole nother perspective as to what men and women are experiencing right now that are starting or growing their families, or the parents to be. Like some of the people that care the most are people like you that their kids are starting to go into adulthood and they're seeing these alarm bells, right? So the drop in male fertility, the drop in sperm count of 50% in 50 years. So on average 1% a year, but it's accelerating. So the sperm count is dropping. Last count was 2.6% drop.
Over 1 year?
Over 1 year.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the infertility rate, it's 1 in 6 couples now are experiencing infertility, and that's accelerating. The numbers are starting to look like 1 in 5. And it's not just U.S., it's global. And so then, those of us that are kind of curious, yes, people are waiting a little longer, but the infertility is going on in our 20-year-olds too. The most important thing that I want to convey is that there's hope. Because so much of the conversation out there is shocking. These 28, 30-year-old women are feeling like they got to start saving to harvest their eggs if they're not ready to start a family yet.
Yeah.
Or, even worse, I had a patient who was at 31 was told she'd passed her window.
At 31?
Yes.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So
we didn't even try to get pregnant until we were married, as I said, 8 years before. We didn't even try to get pregnant until age 31, and then we had our first at age 32. This
narrative that our young adults are being fed is wrong. And so my main thing is to correct that, because what I'm seeing is that when people's bodies are really tuned up, both the men and the women, my age range, when I read the book, I put in there mid 40s is kind of the time to start winding down. Well, I have a patient right now who's just turned 48 and she's 8 months pregnant. So she'll deliver at 8:48.
Wow.
Got pregnant on the first try.
Wow.
Yes.
That's incredible. I mean, that is really incredible.
Yes. And she's felt amazing this pregnancy because she took the time to do a little tune-up rather than rushing right into this pregnancy. We worked together for a few months and she got her body all in balance, and her partner did as well. And everything's so good. And then I see these couples in their late 30s, early to mid 40s that get pregnant and have their healthiest babies yet, even if they've had struggled, had done IVF in the past, when they were younger, go on to get their bodies into balance and do quite well. So in the book, I really outline what people can do to protect their fertility. So even, if you're not wanting to get pregnant now, here are the things that you can be doing to keep your body fertile.
Right.
So beware, you can get extra fertile. So take precautions.
All right.
I've had a lot of accidental pregnancies where people didn't realize how fertile they were.
Right.
With like how to build up the nutrients, how to get the toxins down, how to get a really strong microbiome, get super healthy mitochondria. Like if there's any one theme to between just longevity, what we should all be doing to have long, healthy lives, we need to be taking care and feeding our mitochondria so that everything works better. So things that protect our mitochondria and feed our mitochondria are great. So CoQ10, special forms of CoQ10 like MitoQ, something called phosphatidylcholine, which helps to have healthy cell membranes, which is important for mitochondria and then just for all cellular function. Things like L-carnitine, NAD, there's a whole list of them that can make a huge difference. And then what's really fun is that we can measure some of these things. We can look at your mitochondrial function, see what's happening with it, run our little mini experiments for 6 or 8 weeks and see progress as we go along, check the toxin levels, make sure that the body's really clean, because we now know that, especially for men, the exposure and buildup of toxins in their body not only affect their fertility, but help the time capsule that the sperm is to be healthier by not having the toxins. These toxins like plastics, PFAS, phthalates, so many of them impact not just their fertility, but the health of the baby and even future generations. So really men, in addition to women, which makes sense because the toxins get passed through the pregnancy and through nursing, but men get one shot with it. And it's so important for men that those months before the pregnancy to have an opportunity to not put the things in the time capsule that they don't want, like the toxins, but then be exercising and at a good weight and lowering stress and having a strong microbiome, because those impact the epigenetics, how those genes are being dialed up and dialed down, that then help the baby's genes know how to be expressed. So it's really exciting times because people have done incredible research in epigenetics to help us to know what the important things are.
Yeah, the thing I love the most about your book is that it's such an intentional, loving, preparatory approach to preparing to conceive. And therefore, what we were talking about earlier, both sides are radiating more intentionality, which is radiating more love and bringing these beautiful souls into this physical vessel during this incredible time in humanity's arc. So it's and not everybody can afford to work with someone like you, but you've codified it all in here, which is a real gift.
And it's interesting too, because it really does have the information that people need, that they can go do it. And what's interesting is I've just started an online program for people that want something in between. We've got people in Canada and Finland and US, all coming together and having these conversations and getting to ask questions. So I've even started providing something in between the book and coming to see me as a patient, which I am so enjoying. I didn't know it was going to be. I thought, I'm good at the one-on-one. I'm good at writing the book. I don't know how it's going to be to do an online program, but I love it. It's so, and it's like back to this like belief in humanity. It's so interesting how the people in the program already care about each other, even though they've just met on Zoom. Like they're rooting each other on.
All right.
It's so fun.
You know, one thing you said at Jason and Jessica's, which I loved, and if you're willing to go into it, it would be great. But you said there's these beautiful souls, like these very pure souls that are ready to incarnate for this time.
So on the spiritual side of things, at the sake of the possibility of sounding a little crazy, but you know,
but I loved it. I mean, it immediately sounded like, yes, that is correct. You know,
I get these visions.
Yeah.
Especially in meditation.
Yeah.
Of these soul families.
Yeah.
That have a little different frequency than what our current generations have.
Yeah.
I believe we have soul families and these, and so then the message that I get when I see these soul families is that they are part of the answer for this upgrade in humanity that's going to be happening. That they have a different like frequency.
Yeah.
Their souls have a little different frequency, and that if they try to come into bodies that aren't physically robust, they burn out. They don't make it. I think it's part of why we're seeing some of these, the increase in early miscarriages. Like a lot of women will feel like, oh, I think I was pregnant, but then period comes a few days early or a few days late kind of thing.
Right.
I think a lot of times that's one of these souls that made it through the chute into the metaphysical. There's a discovery that shows that when the sperm meets the egg, there's a spark of light.
I know.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. I've seen those videos. It's so cool. Yeah.
I think that's when the soul is able to connect into physical form.
Yeah.
Is that spark of light.
Yeah.
And so then
I need to put one of those in the show notes for this episode.
Yes. Oh my God.
Because if people haven't seen that, it's it's so fascinating.
It just makes you even more amazed that humanity exists.
Well, we touched on, quantum physics. I mean, we know that we're all light and energy. We already know that. I mean, we know that adult male is on average around 37 trillion cells. And then I apparently have an equal number of organisms on top of that cohabitate with me. That, a lot of them are in the gut.
Times more
skin.
DNA than you do.
Yeah, but they're like living with me.
Yes, exactly.
And
helping us. Like we would be dead without them. They do so much work for us.
Of course, right. But they're part of what forms this physical,
And our epigenetics. They actually influence what our genes do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so it's bacteria, yeast, parasites, and fungi.
All right.
And it's so interesting because there's this ongoing theme of craving sweets with when people have fungal infections. So it's actually, I think it's a lot of what's driving us to eat the carbs.
Yeah, yeah.
So they can get fed.
All right.
So it's an amazing collaboration.
Yeah. It's wild. And I was doing research on this, and I was like, well, I wonder how many, kind of die and are reborn every day. And the number for that, it's around 30 trillion a day.
Yeah.
But now I'm mixing numbers there because that's the combination of cells and the organisms. But it adds up to, so if I'm around 80 trillion things, then around 30 trillion are being reborn every day. But yes, there's this durable sense of self.
Yeah.
And
I think that's the soul.
It's definitely the soul.
I think that's the soul.
Yeah. It definitely is the soul. I mean, if it's not the soul, then there's, which I believe it is, we agree on that, but then there's some kind of transference that's constantly happening with memory to constantly just infuse in all the things being reborn to create that sense of all the memories you've ever had since the time you were born.
Have you ever talked with somebody who has memories of past lives?
Yes, for sure.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got friends who have had, real strong visions of that. I'm also a huge fan. I've covered it on the podcast of, Barry Weiss's book, Many Lives, Many Masters. And then one of my favorites is the kind of the meta study above all those is Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. And it relates a lot to what you were saying, is that there's these souls that are waiting to incarnate for the right time.
So these souls that I see are new souls. They haven't been here before. And they have different operating systems. They're going to help with this embodiment of love and less fear, so that then we can create a different environment for humans to feel safe. And I think that the more of them that are actually able to come into human form, it's going to change the frequency on the planet. Like everything's going to operate differently.
Yeah. I think that's fascinating. And, that has a lot of synchronicity with Chris Bache's book, which is called LSD in the Mind of the Universe, Diamonds from Heaven. He was on episode 36
I'll
of
to listen to that.
The podcast. Oh my gosh, that book is amazing. It's one of the best that I've ever read on trying to decode what the reality is. But if you jump into that book, one of the best ways to start is start at chapter 9, go from chapter 9 to 11, and then you'll want to read the whole thing. But chapter 9 through 11 are on the birth of the future human. And
oh my gosh, so he's saying some of the same things?
He completely is saying some of the same things. And it's this diamond soul that is waiting, that it's basically we're being forged in this world of form through all the pressure to cosmically birth the new human. It's these souls that are waiting. And
so I think the people that are going to really gravitate towards my book are the people that really want to welcome these souls different. Like they're going to be prepared to parent differently. So I need help finding those parents.
Yeah.
I need to have these parents have this book so that they don't have to go through all the trauma. Like, it's really fascinating how many of them actually feel these souls in their fields before they get pregnant or between pregnancies. So I need to find the parents so that they can, have this information to know what to do to prepare. Right. Because the brighter these lights, the stronger the bodies have to be. Yeah, that's really fascinating. The more this idea of self-love, like these parents, the more they really learn to be kind and loving and generous with themselves and each other, the easier the metaphysical will be for these souls to come into. And a lot of times, the way, at least the way I was parented, the way that I parented, I didn't know this, right? So I'm like setting the goals, like very lovingly, but also rather than kind of tapping into the my children's like inner resources to find what they love and figure out who they are and how they want to be. It was more like, this is how we do things. Here's how you're successful. It was more about striving and less about becoming. Right. These souls are going to become. Yeah. More about being versus just constantly doing. Yes, exactly. Yeah. You said it so well. Yeah. Well, I'm borrowing that line from some spiritual teacher. That may have been John Kabat-Zinn, actually, at the meditation retreat. Yeah. So how do you kind of grapple with this reality we're in? I mean, you're well-read, and I've been, I'll tell you that one of the big sparks for my soul quest, and I write about it in Love Conquers Fear, was a very transcendent psychedelic journey where I got to really see behind the veil, and
I'm actually quoting from that journey in the book. Because, I had to do the internal work myself to allow love to conquer my own fear and be rooted, in integrity. And, let the chips fall where they may, I guess, is one way to say it. I mean, one of the really interesting things that, you and I are recording this the week before I go to Tulane University, and next week they are naming me Entrepreneur of the Year. Yeah, I can't even believe it. And when I went on this journey to start this podcast and everything.
Congratulations.
But yeah, thank you. It's really, I was kind of flabbergasted when the president of Tulane, President Fitz, handed me this and said, "We really like you to accept this." And so there's this, I'll be giving a speech next Tuesday, and it's just a huge honor. But I made this calculus where I'm like, I have to just be rooted in this, and I have to be very transparent in terms of how I grappled with the reality. And I had this meeting with Tulane before, and I was like, I'm being very transparent on the podcast. They're like, "We love conquers fear," and it was this really cool instance of where I was like, I never had anything to be afraid of in the first place, in terms of just being real and being authentic about it. But, I can understand that some people that are watching this or listening to this, haven't yet had an experience like that, whether it's psychedelics or near-death experience or meditation or, Pariah in that episode 31, she just had a spontaneous spiritual awakening. And so I'm just curious, how you view this reality that we're in.
I've always had somewhat mystical experiences meditating.
Mm-hmm,
It sent me to a Joe Dispenza retreat and out there in the universe.
I want to go to one of those. I haven't gone yet.
Yeah. It's definitely.
I like his book.
The whole energy and it just helps you to get into a very deep meditative state. And I had been kind of anti-drug actually. Based on my experiences in residency. I had a young woman who ended up in the ICU after doing MDMA. She was totally psychotic,
wow.
Yeah, tipped her over. I had a colleague, she and I were admitting patients in the ER, and a man had come in, that she was taking care of, had come in unresponsive. He passed away. It turned out he had had a coronary artery dissection. So basically the heart artery broke open from cocaine. So I'm like, no substances for me, a little bit of THC in high school. And I'm like, I can't stand up.
Right.
I'm such a lightweight, hardly drink alcohol. And then I had an experience right at the beginning of COVID where I had COVID early, so I started traveling. And so I went to visit a friend in Santa Fe, and this other friend of ours kept popping to mind, and I'd never, ever had a conversation on the phone with this person. I'd run into her places, maybe an occasional text, but we'd never talked on the phone.
Right.
And she kept coming to mind, and so I'm like, we need to call her. And she was like, "Ann, I get who you are. You're my wingman. I just did this psychedelic experience and you came into my journey." And here she was in my awareness that whole day. So I was like, what is that?
All right.
I put there's something going on here. Maybe I should rethink this whole psychedelic thing.
Right.
And so 2 months later, I go and have my own experience.
Yeah.
It was one of the hardest things I've ever done.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. But one of the most absolutely amazing. I had no idea because I've done so little, I'm barely, I think you said you hadn't really dabbled in.
I did LSD once when I was young, like 18, and I did mushrooms once, but I didn't know what I was doing. It was mostly just a super weird experience. You know, it was
Not
it's a
one
very,
you wanted to repeat.
no, and it was just a very different modality. Like there was no eye mask, there's no music. It's just, you know, so it's very external and weird, and lots of weird things. And so I didn't do anything psychedelic again until I was in my 50s, and I'm 54 now. But it was very transcendent.
Yeah.
I mean, and not scary for me at all in terms of the journey I had. But I really think everybody has a different type of journey.
You know, like 20% of the experience is actually in the journey. There's some preparation, and then your higher self or soul or whatever you want to describe talks to you for 3 to 12 hours and then record it.
Yeah.
So the main takeaway is actually kind of on this theme a little bit. Like, I didn't know what my higher self was going to want to review or to cover. But the main thing that I recall from that journey was the question was, is humanity worth saving? And so I had to answer that question.
All right.
So to answer that question, I had to hold all of the pain and suffering of all of humanity.
Wow.
So that's why it was so hard.
That's hard. Yeah.
Like physically, and it became physical for me. Like, so the journey, you're lying down with the mask and weighted blanket on, and I had to hold all of that. I had to sit up and hold it.
Right. Wow.
And I, occasionally people will purge on this particular medicine, but there was so much that came out of me. And I think some of that was my own having held on to some of the pain and suffering that I had seen in residency, especially when you're up close and learning how to do medicine at the same time. But the answer came back to and that's really where I came up with this philosophy of the love, that we are the creators of love. That is such a unique vibration in all of existence. I think we are just one little pinprick of existence. We're kind of negligible, except for this capacity to create love. But so the message was, the answer that came through was yes, even though thank you for asking me this question, because I hadn't thought about this, and this was 2020, in a few years. So the problem with the pain is that it's actually getting passed down epigenetically, so that we can learn from our ancestors and avoid getting mauled by the tiger or the dealing with the famine or all the things. But that epigenetics compounds in generations. So that's part of what the book as well is, if we can do the emotional healing before around the things that have caused us pain, then we're less likely to pass on that amplification of the pain to our children.
Yeah. No, that completely makes sense. And, in one of my journeys, the journey that actually led to Love Conquers Fear, I saw very clearly that God wants us to make it. That, that this age of abundance has never been more possible than it's going to be in this lifetime through this exponential curve, and that God has this completely infinite love for us all, and that's where we get that capability ourselves, because we're part of that. Our soul is part of that. We have that divine spark in us, and it's up to us as Team Humanity to choose that, and we have the free will.
I can't believe you just said that.
Yeah.
Because that was the answer. Team Humanity is assembling. That was the bottom line. And you don't have to do this all yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have to hold all the pain of humanity.
Yeah.
And that the team's assembling. Team Humanity.
The team.
Exactly that.
No, that's it. I mean, that is what this is all about. That's what my book's all about, et cetera, is how do we do that? Practically it's daunting, right? It's, I cover in the book, my book that's coming out, like I don't shy away from any of the biggest problems and opportunities we have. So I go into geopolitics, I have a chapter on that. I go into healthcare, I have a chapter on that. I go into education, I go into the objectification of women and all the suffering we've had as a result of that, and how we need to transcend that, and in some ways are, in some ways backsliding. And I cover a lot of other material around the biggest problems and opportunities we have. But then I conclude the book by talking about how do we transform, and then case studies for why we should believe that we can. Because there's a lot of proof that actually we can do it. When push comes to shove, like Team Humanity gets going. But this is the ultimate forcing function for us. The technology is a forcing function for us to choose.
So part of what comes is like looking at our current trajectory. Mm-hmm. We're off course. Mm-hmm. And so what I love about what you're doing is you're looking for what are the things that we can do to change the course.
That's it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because right now, if we don't change something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I'm very clear-eyed in the book about that. I mean, I have a chapter on nuclear weapons and warfare, and, that chapter talks about how we can gain a handle on that, and ultimately what we need to do and why we should believe we can do it. But, we have in the world today 13,000 nuclear weapons. And do you know what percentage of those it would take to essentially wipe out humanity?
I don't know for sure, but I don't think it's many.
What's your guess?
0.1%?
Yeah, well, you're a lot lower than, but it's 2%.
Yeah, I mean, but it depends on where they hit and what they do, right? Like there's certain things that would wipe us out faster than others.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, the acronym for that is mutually assured destruction, which is MAD. So literally baked into the DoD term for why humanity does this is the insanity that we have to transcend. But ultimately, it is a forcing function for us to transcend it. And the technology curve that we're in is going to show us that we can get to abundance for everyone. We're going to be able to see it on the horizon. I think that's how it's actually going to happen. And we're going to have, bottoms up pressure from, the 8.2 billion people on this planet, and then tops down. I think leaders are going to have a heart shift as they see that this scarcity that we've dealt with, we can transcend it for good. And, one of the things that I've said quite a few times on this podcast is we've only had electricity for 0.1% of our evolutionary time, So we've dealt with scarcity that we can't imagine.
As you're describing this possibility, I think so many of us get our sense of who we are and what we provide in the world, like, why we're even here, through our work and through parenting. And I think there's got to be a shift in like this, like if we're not having to work so hard, and we're not like what actually makes us feel valued and important in our lives, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what you think about that. Like,
no, that's it. I mean, that's it. I mean, one of the, it's funny. I was having this meeting with this entrepreneur that I've known for, probably 27 years for lunch today. And, he's a hardcore entrepreneur, capitalist. And I told him, I said, the funny thing is one of the pushbacks I get from people on us getting to abundance is they'll say, well, do you just mean we're going to be like meditating like the Bhutanese? And I'm like, Well, first of all, you're assuming that's a bad thing. I was like, I went to Bhutan on a family trip in December, and it's obvious how happy that country is. You can feel
Can't wait to go. I've not been there yet.
Oh my gosh, you
It's on
definitely
the
have
list.
to.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's one of the case studies actually in the book. And, they chose to prioritize gross national happiness. It's in the Constitution of the country. And they are not just carbon neutral, they're 3x carbon negative because they have 70% of their land is forest. And they actually have a constitutional requirement that at least 60% of the land forever stays forest.
So where do you think that wisdom and that, what's possible comes from? Because that's like, even if we just have this conversation that's hot right now about getting glyphosate out of our food and in our environment, like there's so much stuck thinking around making changes.
Yeah.
And what you're describing with Bhutan is like, that's
They made
so
a choice.
leaps and bounds over this, the thinking that we have in our country about what's possible.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's education, right? It's educating that these are possibilities. And, there is a lot of darkness right now too. And one of the books that I read, which I just read over this line like 50 times over and over again, is The Alchemist. Amazing book.
Amazing book.
And one of the famous lines in that book is, it's always darkest before the dawn. And so I feel like we're in that time where there's like a lot of light coming, a lot of souls that are coming, et cetera, to help. And a lot of people being awakened, a consciousness awakening underway. And the heart shift is starting, but at the same time, there's this like clinging on to the old zero-sum game. And technology is going to force us to make that shift. And, a very crude example is that we had slaves in this country. That helped bootstrap capitalism in the country. Should have never happened. Horrible, dehumanizing, othering, like literally like treating people as subhuman. And the Industrial Revolution came along and that whole practice was completely unmasked. It's like, why would you do that when you have machines? And so you have to kind of put yourself in a place where we're going to, with this exponential curve, we're going to get to a place where there's going to be so much energy abundance and so much possibility that it's going to force that shift. So it's a combination of us and the technology that we're manifesting. And the vision, that I received is that God is working through us. God is the ultimate technologist. God's the technologist that created the universe, the Big Bang, and the intelligent design is working through us to make that collective pressure and shift a reality. And, we've got to make it. I'm 95% certain we make it, but ultimately we have to make it. There are real risks. And I'm very clear in my book about what the risks are. So that's the way I think it's going to happen. I can't predict what the catalyst. I mean, it's a bit like asking someone in India right before Gandhi came around to predict how the massive population there. Now it's the most populous country in the world, 1.46 billion people. But at that time, they massively outnumbered the British. There were like 15,000 British that were keeping the entire country under British rule. And Gandhi, through nonviolence with the numbers, just said, no, I'm not going to accept this as our reality, and motivated an entire populace through sheer numbers. And I think part of that is going to be the way it happens. I'm not suggesting it's going to be violent. It doesn't have to be, but there's going to be, one thing to be hopeful about is this youngest generation, their alcohol use is just like plummeting. And you're starting to see their social media use decline. You know, they're a bit like Neo in the Matrix. They're just like stopping the bullets. And so I think there's a lot of inputs. It's a very dynamic system, but I do think that there's a spiritual reality that's trying to wake us up and trying to get us to make that heart shift.
And the awareness through things like writing the books and speaking about it. And it's almost like the media and the current narrative around things is kind of lulling people into that fear-based place. And so I love what you're doing, because it's like, it's just opening a door to consider something else. It's like, here's another possible.
Yeah, there's a lot of practices right now where it's putting profit over people. It's like, you know, it's easier to hijack people's amygdalas and get them to just click,
especially since COVID.
Yeah, that's true. But I really think that humanity is going to, especially the younger generation, is just going to be like, stop. Like, we don't want that world. So we'll see. You know, this is the most important project I've worked on in my life. Well, I love your heart and I love your book, and I really appreciate, you know, all that you're putting into the world to get us to this better, more beautiful place. You know, it's all of us working together as Team Humanity. You know, that's going to help, you know, bit by bit, humanity have that collective heart shift.
I see the shift happening. It's changing the trajectory, and I do think it's hopeful. I think it could get a little worse before it gets better, just like I think you're thinking too, but it does feel like there's breakdown of the current system that's not serving us, that's not working, and building something new.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. And we need to, like, we know we have a problem that we need to transcend, that it's more people seeing the possibilities for how we get there. And I think it's going to be a very interesting 10 to 15 years. So you and I are in this together.
I'm glad we're in the same neighborhood, so we can collaborate.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having
Really
me.
appreciate you. Thanks, everybody, again, for tuning in to Love Conquers Fear. What a loving, soulful episode. Absolutely love Dr. Ann Shippy's heart. Definitely pick up her book. If you are in the process of thinking about conceiving, this is your book. You get all of her wisdom in there in one read, which is a real gift to us all, and really collectively could be the medicine that humanity needs to make that heart shift. So thanks again for all the shares. I really, really appreciate it. I just had an amazing meeting with a big fan of Love Conquers Fear before this. And she was telling me how much it's changed her life, and that just means the world to me. And I'm having that happen, you know, multiple times a day now. And that gives me the real helper's high, as my CEO coach, Kirk Dando, would say, of how this project is really helping people out there. So thanks a lot. Please share it. As I've said many times, I'm self-funding this. This is my love letter to humanity. And if this moves you, then tell people about it. Thank you so much.